Hi everyone, welcome back to AP Macroeconomics with your favorite teacher, me, Mr. Fritz. Today we're going to talk about economic growth. So economic growth is an increase in the quantity and quality of goods and services being produced in an economy adjusted for price level. When we think about economic growth, the most important thing we need to keep in mind is capital goods. When businesses purchase capital goods, they're increasing their productive capacity. So what's going to be important here is the real interest rate. Businesses are going to be buying these capital goods and they are expensive. And so if they're going to buy them, they're going to have to borrow money in order to do it. And so they are going to want to purchase capital goods the most when the real interest rate is at its lowest. So anything that causes the real interest rate to go down is going to cause businesses to want to purchase more capital goods. One of the ways we'll see this happen most often in this class is an increase in the supply of loanable funds. So if households, people like you and me, start to save more money, we would have an increase in the supply of loanable funds, or the amount of money that's actually available to be lent out. That would cause a decrease in the real interest rate. It would now be cheaper to borrow money long term. Now that it's cheaper to borrow money long term, businesses will be more likely to increase their interest-sensitive investment spending on capital goods. Coca-Cola might build a new factory because it's cheaper to borrow money, and so when they pay it off, it won't feel as bad. Other things that cause the supply of loanable funds to increase are going to be a government budget surplus. When taxes are higher than government spending, you're going to have extra money sitting around. At the very least, the government doesn't have to borrow any money anymore, but they could also even lend it out, put it in the bank, lend it out, and that lowers the real interest rate. Finally, financial capital inflow, or foreign financial investors bringing their money over into this country, putting it in the bank here. That increases the supply of loanable funds and it makes it cheaper to borrow. That drives down the real interest rate, and again, that'll increase the interest-sensitive investment spending that businesses are doing on capital goods. Once those capital goods have been bought and are in place, that's going to increase our long-run aggregate supply curve. It'll shift to the right, which will look like this. That's our new long-run aggregate supply curve. So I put LRAS1. This is our new YF. Remember, the long-run aggregate supply curve is labeled YF at the bottom, and that stands for a real national income at full employment. Another way to think about that is our potential real GDP. So once we have more capital goods, the longer aggregate supply curve shifts to the right, and now our potential GDP is increased. Even with the same amount of workers, we can make more stuff because we have more technology and capital goods that allow us to produce that stuff. A couple other things can lead to an increase in our economic growth. One of them is an increase in human capital. Remember, human capital is education. College or technical schools that teach workers how to do their job better. If we have higher educated workforce, then each worker is better at their job and they can produce more things. An increase in technology also allows us to produce more goods and services. One final thing that could help cause an increase in economic growth could be an increase in our labor force. If more people become old enough to work in the labor force and join it, or there's immigration from other countries and they join our labor force, that will increase our ability to produce more goods and services. So that was economic growth. Remember, the most important thing to think about when you're thinking of economic growth is an increase in capital goods, and that's going to be affected by the real interest rate. So if there's an increase in interest-sensitive investment spending, we should see an increase in capital good production and an increase in our productive capacity in general. See you next time. Goodbye.